This season on the art and science of complex sales, we're thrilled to present Tales from the Front Lines, a season developed for the leaders shaping the future of complex sales. We're bringing you straight into the action with the C-suite, VPs of sales, sales development experts, and top-performing sales execs who are redefining success in the B2B world. These are the trailblazers that are tackling tough sales cycles, coaching sales champions, and aligning teams to deliver exceptional results. So join us as we unpack the hard lessons, the breakthrough moments, and the invaluable insights from the best in the business. It's more than a podcast, it's a guide to growing revenue with confidence. So let's get started. Hello. We are closing out 2024 and moving into 2025. So today we have Matt Ferguson, CEO and owner of MDF Coaching and Consulting, a man of the people, and an all-around great sales leader. Matt is working across multiple industries and companies building great cultures and successful teams. He has some amazing advice for us today as we dive into some of the key things we have to continue to focus on to elevate outcomes in the new year. Make sure that you stay to the end where Matt gives some very pointed and direct advice about what excellent looks like in sales and how we can help lift each other up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, listen and enjoy. So let's get into it with Matt Ferguson. All right. For the second time on this podcast, and for the third time in the past, 5 minutes of trying to start it and record, Matt Ferguson, welcome to the show. How the heck are you?
Well, we're here. Let's hope it works.
I've had to say hi like 4 times already, which is, it's not a bad thing, I guess. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. We're getting towards the end of the year, and I'm excited. We're going to do a year-end podcast today about what the heck is going on in sales. So why don't you kick us off with a little bit about your background, where you're starting, what you're doing these days?
Yeah, about 80 to 90% of my time is focused with frontline sales managers working with their sales teams. So a lot of what I'm doing there is breaking down people's people, metric, and processes to see what the heck is going on, right? Because if somebody calls me, things usually aren't going great. But if there's problems, it usually falls into one of those 3 categories.
So you got a pretty unique view these days of the front line. So you're selling your own stuff, you're working with direct salespeople, and you're working with frontline sales managers.
Yep.
Any particular industries?
No, all over. And one of the things, that's really interesting that I noticed probably about 5 or 6 years ago is no matter what industry, because when I was working for companies, I worked for in a couple different industries, and I noticed that all the problems were the same, and especially in different industries. And now I've worked in 20 plus different industries in over 5 different countries. And I'm about to add 2 more where I've already heard their problems, right? And just kind of doing some, last second thing before they become clients. But all the problems from Australia to Maine to Vancouver are the same. It's amazing to me.
Well, let's dive into that, because I want to hear what those problems are, what's going on in the world of sales. I'm out there every day as well, but what are some of the core things that you're running into?
Well, I'll give you 2 for just right off the top of my head. And one is, do you have the right people doing the right things? Because I think a lot of times we try to force people to do things that they're not good at. Mm-hmm. And we struggle with that because usually when people don't like doing things, or they're hired to do one thing and then they're asked to do another thing, that usually doesn't work out very well. And 2, and this may be the bigger problem, is I shouldn't say nobody, right? Because there are some out there, but the majority of time, the biggest problem are people go after the wrong stuff, the wrong accounts. The
wrong people in the wrong seats, and no ICP.
No ICP.
No ideal customer profile.
Correct. So, and there might be a little bit of something, but it's not 100% defined. And as you know, when stuff isn't defined, right, and expectations aren't set, people will do what they want to do, which is usually talk to people that are easier to talk to, which isn't the ICP, which aren't going to either spend money or spend the right amount of money. And that's what happens.
So tell me a little bit about in terms of what's going on today. Is that you've been working this for 5 to 6 years. Is there anything that you'd say from 2020, 2024 going into 2025? Is there anything unique about that people are facing, or any unique ways that people are trying to use to solve those issues?
I almost think that the more tools and the more stuff that people have, almost like the worse that it gets.
All right, let's dive.
That's kind of sad. Like I can think of a couple clients off the top of my head that have 2 or 3 different things that they log into, but then they keep everything on another spreadsheet because like they really don't know, like the tool's supposed to help me this way, but it really doesn't help me this way. Or I have a company building me a list, but when I get a list, like I always found this when I bought a list off of somebody, or I tried to get leads off of somebody, I spent more time refining and fixing the list than I should have just done it myself. You know, so like I've always had this dream scenario where I just hired like these perfect list builders, because like that is the thing. Like most of the people don't have a good list, and you're only really as good as your list.
Well, tell me, only really as good as your list. So how do you cultivate? How are you going out and trying to help people cultivate those lists? And
I've spent more time on this. Either it's more. I think I spend more time on the right accounts than anything. I really do, because I know that's just the most important thing. Like even if you have like an average salesperson going after the right things all of the time, I would take that over the good salesperson going after the crummy things most of the time. Although good people usually don't go after crummy stuff. But it's like, hey, let's take your current accounts, right? The accounts that you look at that are using your product specifically, right? And are spending the right amount of money, and people are actually, the company's making money off of that. And what are the characteristics of those? And how do we define it? And then how many are actually out there, right? And how do we start to target them? Because it's just the thing that people don't realize is that if you're not doing that, that means you're not going to get those accounts. Or if you're only targeting those sometimes, you're not going to get them as much as you should, because your time is being spent in places that it doesn't really matter. But every second that you're not spending time on the good stuff, it's taking away from you.
So when you go into an engagement, how do you go about then finding them, defining that perfect ideal customer profile, and then finding the right places that you need to be to target the right people?
Well, for one, you have to start with what you're good at right now. And you have to look at that, and because it's a good question, because it can be hard and it can be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But sometimes you have to pick some stuff, right? And the thing that I hear most is, well, we don't really know until we talk to the people. But here's what I think the trick of it is trying to figure out, hey, when we're creating this list, like I understand that we can't know everything, right? And it's never going to be this perfect fit. But how do we pick some things, right? 2 to 3 to 5 things that can objectively be defined, that when we're prospecting, whether we look at the website or we look at the size of the company or the revenue or the people that we're actually targeting, and say, hey, this is 80 to 90% going to be a top account of something that we want to go after. But if we can't pick that before, that means like the list that we're making, like we're kind of guessing. And when you're guessing, that takes away from some of it, because that's more wasted time if we get on the phone and we find out that's not a fit. So I really like to narrow it down to stuff we can figure out like pre-call, just so it's like we know, like, okay, this is 80 to 90% good. And here's what I'd say, and I'd ask you this question, right? You're head of sales at Membrain, and you probably look at all this stuff in the thing you're targeting. And I send you some business every once in a while, and you probably look at something and you'd be like, Matt, don't send me this crap, or you know what I mean? But my guess is when you look at an account even before you talk to them, you know if it's probably a good fit or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have 4 to 5 things that you can look at in terms of the complexity of the sales, the number of salespeople they have, the systems that they're using, and if they have a committed sales organization, like a B2B sales organization. We crush it there. The last thing that's more of like a psychographic is we need to have either an owner, a CEO, or a VP of sales that has tried the quick fix and it doesn't work. They're committed to change. I'm not going to buy the cheapest. I'm not going to buy a patch, and then we fit perfectly. But if you get people kicking the tires and they just want the latest and greatest next best tech to solve all of their issues, we're a horrible fit. We just are. I mean, we got cool tech. It's awesome. It's cutting edge. It's all that stuff. But when you get down to it, that's not why people buy what we do. It does take a while to find out those characteristics. It takes a while to find exactly where those people sit and where they communicate, how they communicate. And I find that starts to be the magic of when you get this client profile and list kind of mesh together, is you get both the problems and the areas where they live that you can actually talk to people.
Correct. And the more that you define it, this isn't like, it can be easy and it can be hard, right? But the more that you figure out what the perfect place is and the more that you can put people in the best positions to win, the more everybody's going to win. But like, if it's just a free for all and like, they're calling these accounts and these accounts. And I'm like, well, are these accounts difference makers? Well, no, not really. Well, let's take a look at what your difference makers are and get people more in front of that, because it's just math. Right. But if the math is all over the place, that's why people have so much trouble forecasting, right? Because it's crummy accounts versus good accounts versus this spending and that spending. Like, the more you have defined, the better you're going to be at all that stuff.
Yeah, I had a good buddy, and he recently had a contract gig for about 6 to 8 months with a startup. It was a startup company, and he thought he'd give it a shot. So they had developed a kind of cool product in the music industry. I won't get too much into it, but one of the things that was really interesting about the owner, and I don't know if you run into this type of owner, is like, yeah, just go out and talk to everybody. Just go out and talk to everybody. The product is so cool, it'll sell itself. Right? He didn't last in that job more than 6 to 8 months because he hated it, because he could never narrow down and focus and then execute a plan. But how often do you find organizations that you go into that it's just like, yeah, just go talk to everybody? Like, how big is that problem these days?
I don't hear everybody too often, but where I seem to sit with people that I work with is it's more of, I would call mid-market to not enterprise, but maybe just the step below, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's the crummy small companies that are easier to talk to, that spend a little bit of money, but they spend so much time talking to those people, then that's all they get. And then that's the biggest problem, to where if we just defined it, and I know this problem so well, I've talked about this before, but we created an SDR team when nobody even knew what SDRs were. And our AEs won't even take the meeting, because the way that the comp plan was designed is they were getting paid on any meeting, right? So what did they do? They just booked any meeting that they could book, and nobody ever, did anything. They didn't even want to run the meetings. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at it and I was like, well, let's just switch the comp plan so they only get paid on these type of meetings, because that's the meeting people want to run. And then it was properly defined. It was easy to do, and it fixed the problem. But I would say it's more of a small to medium-sized companies to where they should be targeted.
So let's shift a little bit. So we spent a lot of time on this finding the right, the ICP, the ideal client profile, and the list, and that is something that people are still working out. Let's shift a little bit to the right butts and the right seats. And you talked about that as something that's going on in sales right now, and always has, right? How do you find sales teams being structured today? I mean, you're there. you're on the, like I said, on the front lines. Are you finding same old stuff that people are doing SDRs plus AEs plus account managers? Is there a shift? Is it a variety of stuff that's happening? What are you seeing?
It's a variety. I get your thought on this. What do you think the perfect org looks like? And I know that's kind of a loaded question because there's all different. But if you were building, a sales team of 7 to 20, how would you build it?
It depends on how defined the ICP is for me. If I can have a very targeted niche, then I want to have at least two. I do want to have two. I wouldn't even call them SDRs, but they are the more junior people that I am continually training and bringing up. And I do want them on the front end. I like pairing them with an AE. Now, people think that's a double up. I don't, because you're always bringing on the next level of talent, and then you're able to grow as you close. And then I do like a traditional account manager / customer success level at the right size. So, you can have customer support for a lot of things, but that for your key accounts, I like it. I like that when I have a really targeted niche. I like insurance or something like that because or insurance agencies is one that I did for a long time, because you can just move fast and be really, really, really specific. For things that are a little bit more, that's not how I built a Membrain, because I don't think it's the right way. Quite frankly, we sell through a lot of partners. We do a lot of other things. I like for us, we have to be able to talk to a CEO really, really well. And we have to be able to talk to a partner really, really well and talk sales concepts. So to me, that is I have a much more advanced AE team, customer or sales effectiveness consultants. That's what they are. That can drive success through partnerships and clients. So I don't know. To me, it's all dependent on how focused and what market I'm in.
Yeah, for sure. I think now, how much do your AEs hunt?
Roughly 30% of the time, maybe 25. Okay. We do a lot more partnerships stuff, and then we feed. I call it feeding the channel, right? With our hunting. So, but we're mainly focused on our partners.
Okay, because I've always liked my AEs to hunt.
Mm-hmm. I need it. I think you need it.
But I also think what happens is you start out as an SDR, okay? And then you get promoted to AE. And then it's like, oh, I get SDRs now and I don't have to hunt anymore. Mm-hmm. And I just think, like, for me, I can still remember when we hired that SDR, the SDR teams, I was like, well, what are the AEs going to do all day? Mm-hmm. But I think that if you can have an SDR team that's feeding the AEs and the AEs are still hunting too, like that's the way that I like to have it.
I like a targeted AE list. So a tight targeted AE list that it has to be hunted. Like that's and then someone that's more junior has a broader list. And I think and I say that with some trepidation, but it's not like huge. I don't think we should just throw everybody at it. It doesn't make sense when you just have like you're trying to fish in the ocean. You need to narrow your ponds, right? But I do think that I wouldn't call them SDRs, but those junior AEs do have a larger list that are focused on smaller companies. I love that model.
That's what but a lot of times what I see is SDR gets promoted, right? Mm-hmm. And then doesn't feel like they have to hunt anymore. But when you sit there and look and see that the meetings that they're getting and the math and you look at like, well, how is this going to add up? Like you have to go find some of your own stuff. But that's that's how I like to see it. But I think in the way that some of these orgs are set up, it makes it hard because people get into a certain position and feel almost like I don't know if entitled's the right word, but then, then it's tough for the manager to get them to hunt. And that's one of the problems that I see It's one of the problems that I see a lot.
I think it's the way I've always coached it is I think people need to, and I've said this for a long time, need to be able to earn their own lunch money, right? So I think an SDR is a bonus. Marketing is a bonus for an AE. It's just something that it's great to see that. And I see less and less companies heavily investing in the SDR infrastructure and that whole side of it. I see more going to a more full cycle, mainly because of that is they need this. They recognize there is this ability you have to have that ability to develop relationships across the broad market as an AE, as well as dive deep into relationships. I think that's a good thing.
No, but it's funny. What I see, and this is what happens though. Okay, new reps in the beginning, right? And let's just talk about full cycle reps here for a second, because I have a good example that I'm thinking of right now with one of my clients, and had somebody start out that was just like, wow, I cannot believe all the pipeline they're creating. And then some of the business started closing, right? So, I mean, it was almost mind blowing to see, because they had never had anybody do this before, but we've specifically hired for a hunter. And then about 6-7 months in, guess what happened?
Stopped hunting. They got an SDR?
Not yet, but the pipeline started going down, right? And it happens. It's a tale as old as time, right? I'm sure you've had this happen before. You get in, you start hunting, you want to impress everybody, and then this and that, and then you start closing business, and then all of a sudden you're spending your time over here on probably things you don't even need to spend your time on. But now everybody's back on the right track, right, with the hunting. But we went 1 or 2 months where like, what actually was going on? But I think when you have full cycle reps, that's something that you have to pay attention to, is don't let them get caught spending time on stuff that doesn't really matter. But I'm sure you've seen that a million times. That happens all the time, but that's something that you have to pay attention to.
I do it. I mean, I've done it. I've coached people to do it. I have to absolutely shiny objects are the killer. I think that we've come out recently with this new product around coaching, and we call it Elevate. But it's actually I love it because it erases that problem for me. It erases the shiny object problem.
Yeah, because
everything is so directly in front of people's faces about what they need to accomplish, even in terms of training. And then I can dive in and focus on it. Else, even going through a partner network like we do, shiny objects come all the time. Like it's the next greatest thing. But I love that ability and to focus and help people activate with discipline is huge. It's game changing. I know that's a big part of what you just do in market. It's just, hey, let's get back on track.
But the manager's got to pay attention to that stuff, because here's the easy thing. You get somebody that's hunting and closing, right? And you're like, oh man, this person's doing great. And then a couple months go by and you're like, oh, they're doing great. And I don't have to spend a lot of my time with that, when actually you should be spending a lot of time with that person, because they're the one that's going to get you places, right? But our mind always goes to the bad, right? And I got to fix this problem and this problem versus the good. Into the good's what we should be focusing on, because when we find good, we got to find more of that. Because I always say we wait until things are bad to start pushing on people, when we should actually push when things are good, because it's easier to get people to do things when things are going well, because there's momentum.
Yeah. It is. I think it's a natural human thing that we do. It comes up in sales so much. Like, I do like the percentages. How do I divvy up, like, especially as a leader and manager, like, how do I divvy up time by percentages? Okay, we should be spending 30% here in prospecting. So let's do it. What does that mean in terms of our actual numbers? What does that mean in terms of your actual pipeline that you need to get to close? And how do I come in and assist you with that?
Totally. And here's another example I can think of is, we look at good months as look at all this business we close. But then let's just say we don't close any business, let's say we miss our revenue number or something like this, but like we killed it on like new meetings.
Yeah.
Well, the new meetings is actually better. You see, there's always two sides to every story. And I think a lot of the times the meeting part of it doesn't get celebrated as much because, revenue just hasn't followed yet. But it's like, how can you have that happy balance between both and celebrate both? Because what you focus on, your people focus on, right? And if all you ever focus on is the result, well, then that's what people and you get caught up on that. But it's definitely, and it's hard, right? But that's, are you paying attention to the right thing?
We say that sales is one of the most evident professions where what have you done for me lately is, in terms of closed revenue, is what is looked at. But it takes the what have you done for me lately is actually started 6 months, 8 months, 12 months before with what you're doing now with your habits and discipline. I mean, you're a golfer. It's the same type of thing, right? You get in, it's like you can't have a great golf swing without a bunch of practice. It's the same thing with sales. It's like, how do I get in, practice, get my reps, get my meetings in, build that muscle and discipline and activity and habits. This is actually a really hard time of year to keep it up, especially and going into the new year. I've always found that it's a really tough time to keep those habits up and then get energy from it. Do you find that with sales teams, or do you find them pumped up for the beginning of the year?
Yes, but here's the thing. For whatever reason, I've always loved December. And if I were to trace it back to one thing, all right, when we were selling advertising, this is before I even got promoted, our president used to always say, hey, there's budget to be found, and all the thing. People have leftover budget and blah, blah. I'm like, is that okay? So we're actually going to call somebody and we're going to that's going to happen, And I made a cold call to a company called Sports Chalet, right? Which isn't even open anymore. It was a West Coast sporting goods store. And this guy answered the phone, right? And I gave him my elevator pitch to try to even keep him on the phone on a cold call. And I caught him, right? And then he's like, whoa, you could actually do something like that. And then the phone hung up. Like, I remember this like it was yesterday. It's probably like 13 years ago. And I'm like, damn it. Somebody finally picked up the phone, and then we get disconnected. I'll call him back. And he answered, and he had $26,000 that he could spend. And like in the days of our start, that was our first year as a company. I got $26,000 out of that cold call. It launched in December. So like December, I don't know, for me has always been like this special month. And what I've seen other reps do in December is, in one particular rep I can remember, she had a bad year. A bunch of other people had good years that she was kind of peers with. And I watched her in November and December book a ton of meetings, because people still do work in December. And it really jump-started her year the next year. So like December, I don't know. For me, I like it, but I understand too the other side.
Yeah, it's one of the fascinating things is the end of year in December. Like, so the end of fiscal year in December, we don't have that. I actually think, fortunately, because these last 2 weeks in December, then I have in previous companies where they become the most stressful on the work side, and you're supposed to be shutting out. I always found that tough. Hey, we're getting close to time here. I do want to ask you one question. As we go into 2025, is there one thing in 2025 that you could see successful sales reps doing or changing about their behavior?
Just be consistent. I mean,
not consistently bad.
I think about it all the time because the sign over my head is just small wins equals big wins, right? The note that my brother left, we found in his car. And it's the consistency that you do every day, right? The problem is that we all, January 6th, right, when we've eaten too much or whenever that first Monday breaks after the holiday, we're all going to go on some diet, right? That I'm going to eat salad every day for 30 years and not drink and go gangbusters. And then, Thursday I'm ordering pizza from Pizza Hut. Like you don't, I heard James Clear talking about this on a podcast, right? He's like, just be consistently something better, right? It's not that you have to make 1,000 phone calls every single day. Just consistently do the right little things every day and it will add up over time. But if it was one thing, I hear Ian Koniak talk about that all the time because he works with, more sales reps, right? So he's on the front line with sales reps. But like he's always talking about like the consistent, like the little things that you do every day add up over time. But like if I were to tell sales reps to do one thing, it'd be figure out something consistently you can do all the time and it will add up.
Let's go back to the beginning of this. I mean, one thing, be consistent. I would say push yourself. If your company doesn't have it, push yourself to define that ideal profile and consistently go after it. Like,
and I want to add something to that.
Yeah.
And I know I talk about accounts probably more than anybody. ICP more than anybody, maybe besides for Wayne Morris. He might talk about it more than me. But define, right? Like consistently define what a good day and a good week looks like. Like at the end of the week, what do you want to say on Friday afternoon at 4:00? Like, I had a good week. And objectively define it. I don't care if that's I booked a meeting or I closed an account. It doesn't have to be the same every week. But if you stack that up week over week, month over month, I guarantee that your year is going to look great at the end if you're focused on consistently doing the right thing.
Do you do any sort of standard weekly journal or weekly report or anything like that for yourself? Or is that something that you've looked at?
I define for me right about what we talked about. And it's different, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of every week, I look back and be like, did I accomplish these 3 or 4 things that I wanted to accomplish? Because especially, I can't tell you, Paul, how many times I've sat there at the end of the week and been like, oh man, I feel like I should have done more. I'm sure you do that, right? But define for yourself like what it is, because if you don't, then you constantly, like I have that personality is like, you could always do more, you could always do something else, but that drives you to insanity if you don't define what's good. And like, that's what I try to get my sales leaders to do is like, guys, like what is good, right? Not some numbers that the company set that nobody's ever going to hit. Define for your people, like what a good job is. Because if you don't, then people don't know if they're good or not. I really think deep down, if we were to run a poll on this, what do you think the number one thing that people want to know out of their job is?
That they are decent at it and they're making some sort of impact.
That's it, right?
Yeah, or none.
So that's it. So define what that is. And I'm telling you that gains people's momentum. They get confidence. And that's just the biggest thing.
That's awesome. Well, everybody, I would recommend highly Matt Hub to connect with Matt. I know you're on LinkedIn a ton. Other places that people can connect with you?
LinkedIn's the best place.
All right. Matt Ferguson on LinkedIn. MDF Consulting is the name.
MDF Coaching and Consulting.
MDF Coaching and Consultant. Matt Ferguson, legend, awesome person, out in Phoenix, Arizona right now, originally from Cleveland. I like the Cleveland side better. Go Browns.
The weather's better here.
I know. Oh, I know. I absolutely better. But yes, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to close up the year. We're going to close up 2024, and we're going to get on to 2025. And we should probably say Happy New Year.
Yeah, for sure. Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
holidays.
Everybody.
Happy New Year's.
Have an amazing one. We'll see you in 2025. Thanks so much for tuning in. Keep shining bright. Thanks again, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. I hope today's conversation provided you with valuable insights and practical ideas to help you and your team elevate the profession and succeed in today's complex world. This podcast is brought to you by Membrain.com. Membrain is the B2B growth platform for CEOs, sales leaders, and sales executives who are committed to sustainable growth and change. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, like, subscribe, share it with your network. Your support really helps us bring more valuable insights from the best in the business straight to you. Also, check us out at Membrain.com. We're more than a technology. Membrain equips your teams with the expert coaches and trainers, amazing sales methodologies, process, people, and tools to continually improve and coach results. More than a CRM, it's a network, and it's designed to help your team execute with confidence, smash goals, and overall up your sales game. So we'll see you next time for another episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. And until then, as always, keep shining bright.